Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I appreciate your comments and feedback. And I'm really enjoying the variety of guests that I've been getting lately from some of the wonderful publicists out there. And so I just want to thank them on air for that. And I want to thank David Meltzer for our relationship and all the things that he's done for me over the years. I love seeing what he's doing. It's important to say whenever this show airs is that we just got off the news. It's early morning today. It is June 24th. Recording this, that Roe versus Wade was overturned by the Supreme Courts. And before everybody goes crazy, please do your research. Think about the Constitution and the role that lawyers play and what this actually means before you start fighting everybody. So I'll leave it at that. We'll have a whole other show on Roe versus Wade, and we'll weigh on that on a different day. So, I do see a lot of potential guests on a weekly basis from publicists, and oftentimes I'll use their Instagram account to decide, hey, is this going to be a good fit for me? So today's guest, I was flipping through his Instagram, and I saw this bottle of Cholula, and I thought, what does somebody have to say about Cholula? So I'm going to read this because it was well written. David, I hear you laughing already.
This is my introduction, my Cholula post.
Absolutely, because I think it's fabulous. It says, Derek, I just checked with the Center for Disease Control, and the number of Cholula-related COVID cases is basically zero. So what do you say we have? Well, I'll leave the chain off, puts the Cholula bottles back out by the napkins. And then you go on to say, business leaders, seriously stop using COVID as an excuse to withhold amenities and offer reduced services that we used to receive for the same dollars spent. It goes on. I'm not going to read it all, but it was absolutely fabulous. And you resonate with me 100%. So I've got David Avrin on the line. David, thank you for your post.
Introduction. Yeah, I think the most interesting introduction I've ever had. It was essentially a rant. I think I just gotten back, and I won't say the name of the chain either. And I said, "Can I get Cholula?" "Oh, sorry." The 16-year-old says, and I'm like, "Why?" And she says, and she's like, looks at me, she goes, "COVID." I said, "You don't have Cholula because of COVID?" First of all, it's like 2 years afterwards.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all of those Cholula-related COVID exposures, give me a break. So anyway, that was a rant. Occasionally, that I throw that in there.
You know what? It was healthy, and so I'm looking at you on the screen, and behind you is your book, Why Customers Leave, right? And I was in the restaurant business for a very long time. My listeners know that my brother was the CEO of In-N-Out Burger for 35 years.
Very cool.
His sister-in-law owns the company, and I did a nice 12-year stint there. Very successful stint, by the way. And, we were number one in customer service, always. Yeah. Always. Yeah. And I guarantee you that COVID did not change the way that they handled their protocols, really, right? They even got shut down in San Francisco because they weren't going to enforce things on their customers that they didn't believe in. So when I think about this Cholula, it's like, can we stop blaming COVID for the way we're doing things now?
Yeah, and I'm not one of those people, and I know the show isn't about any of this, but it's not about denying science. It's at some point, from an economic perspective, let's stop using it as an excuse. I travel the world, working with organizations to help them become ridiculously easy to work with, and there's so many things that we do that are just kind of ridiculously complicated or frustrating, or how often do you feel like you're talking to a brick wall, or you go to a website and it's like there's no phone number, no freaking phone number anywhere, because somebody made a decision that we're not going to let our customers call us. So there is no shortage of content. So as the world opens back up and I'm back out on the road and working with companies and speaking to audiences and writing books, there's so many ridiculous things that companies do and to try and take things off their plate. But anyway, I'm real fortunate to be able to do what I do, and I do it with a lot of humor. And so it's a way of avoiding yelling at audiences. So I just pepper in a lot of humor, and I throw in funny scenarios to help them, kind of rap on their forehead, say, "Hello, McFly, listen up."
Yeah. What's interesting about these scenarios, thinking about COVID as one, it gives us an opportunity to actually shine instead of take away. And I think a lot of companies miss that opportunity to shine and be different, find real viable solutions to the problems, and with the understanding that customers still have needs. And we're especially,
but they've changed.
Yes,
right?
They've
changed because of this whole new generation of conveniences. And you and I both have a marketing background, but I think it also fits in why I love your show, And I love the premise behind it and the conversations, and I've listened to a whole bunch as well. But because there are so many who won't do the obvious, or they're too busy listening to the bean counters, or they look at a business model they've had for 30 years. And the ones who say yes, who are open to new mindsets and approaches and disruption, from an organizational level and also on an individual leadership level, they have a distinct competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. The ones who have circled the wagon, who are still huddled under their table in the fetal position with their thumb in their mouth, or worry that somebody moved their cheese, they're being left behind.
Yeah.
And so that's why one of the things I love, and I know I sound like I'm sucking up, and I am just a little bit, why I love the podcast, because I'm so all in on that mindset, which is about being bold, about calculated risks, not saying yes to everything. Even in business, sometimes it's a no. If you have a vegan restaurant, somebody wants a buffalo burger. Sorry, dude, it's a hard no. But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today.
David, thanks. In all fairness, David is a keynote speaker, consultant, and business author on customer experience. And you've been around the block for a while, and you've got a number of books out. So there's a more gentle introduction to you, David.
That's fine.
Can you walk us back a little bit? I always like to talk about people's history and where they got started at. Can you give us some foundational elements of where life started for you in business and some of your early experiences?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm the second oldest of 6, so we have a big family of high achievers. My father was a rocket scientist, like an actual rocket scientist. He invented the first cameras that ever took pictures from the surface of another planet. I was a cheerleader in college, so clearly it skips a generation. No, but I came from this family where and you kind of grow up and you think that your family is like every family. And I've come to grow as I've grown up, and I've had my own kids, and we're new empty nesters, 5 of our own grown and gone. But we see how many other people who don't have fathers who are around, or who have come from abusive relationships or abusive parents. We were really lucky. We had our parents who told us that we were smart and told us that we were beautiful. And I think I'm so grateful for that foundation, because for me, I grew up with this whole mindset that there's nothing that I can't do, or at least nothing that I don't want to try. And so as I look at myself growing up, I actually went to college on a full ride acting scholarship, theater and music. Mm-hmm. And I just because I love performing, it was great fun. I had a brother who was in law school, and we all kind of had our own path. But a couple of years in, I came to recognize that I'm the only straight guy in the department, and not that there's anything wrong anyway. But I realized at some point I got to support a family, and so because I have this deep radio voice, I went in one day. I gave up my scholarship. I had a full scholarship. I went and got a job at the local radio station, and I changed my major to broadcast journalism. And so I ended up my degree was in journalism. And then I went to the dark side, and I was a PR flack, and did PR for a while. But as I look at my history, and I like I said, with the theme of your show, I have gone after the things that I wanted to do. I thought something would be fun. So I walked into the radio station that day, and I asked to speak to the program director. And she says, "Can I ask who's here?" I says, "David Avrin." And she brought me back. I was 19 years old. I sat down, and he looked at me with this quizzical look, and I said, "So tell me about radio." And I walked out with the job.
Right.
And my wife today, who's bless her heart, she's a little bit of an introvert and just an angel. And she just looks at me and shakes her head all the time, because that's just me. And so I haven't really waited for opportunities. I've gone after the things that I thought were fun. And if somebody said no, then it was no.
Yeah.
But I started a cable television station, or a program in college. I started a co-ed cheerleading squad because I thought it would be fun to learn how to do a back handspring. And I was in the dorms, and it's the same thing for jobs, and sort of being bold. I think, as my father would have said, it sort of marked my past.
It's interesting the way that you talk about going after things, and I'm very much the same. The feedback I get often is, "Jim, you're good at everything you do." The reality is I'm not. I just
You're
go.
selective.
I'm selective, right? I said
Yeah.
you'll never see me on the basketball court or playing baseball, but I will run my ass off in a race because I like to run. And it seems like you're very similar. Is that by going after the things you want, you're more passionate about it, so therefore you're better at it, and you seem to find a way to get it done. What is it? What is the trait that allows you to be that person?
I love that you said that, because I think I would identify the same way. We take strategic risks.
Mm-hmm.
We're not stupid. We're not going to be successful at everything, but the things that I think part of being passionate about something and loving something or thinking that would be really fun gets us motivated to do the extra work that it's going to take to make that happen. And so for me, I used to joke that I didn't get turned down for a lot of dates, not because I'm so good looking. I wasn't going to ask somebody who I didn't think was going to say yes. Right. And it didn't mean that I lowered my standards, but I was very targeted. And I think it's a great message for your audiences as well. Whether it's going back to the days of what color is your parachute, or others, what are you darn good at? I like the things that, what was the book? Strengths Finders, right? It was one of those things where you look at sort of the personality tests and everything else. But at the beginning of the book, it tells the story that we all know about Rudy, who was the kid at Notre Dame who wanted to play football, but it was a very different approach. And he said it was an absolute complete waste of his college experience, because he spent all this time trying to be good at something he would never be good at, when he could have spent that same time pursuing something he would be good at, and he'd be 4 years down the road. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I've even learned that in business, and I have staff that helps take care of the things that I'm not particularly good at. It doesn't mean that things don't need to get done. We just backfill where our deficiencies are. But it's also freed me up to go after the things that I would love to do, that I think are fun. Now, your question was, what do you think? Where do you think that comes from? There's got to be a fear factor to an extent, right? I have a lot of people that depend on me for their livelihood. And I got 3 colleges I'm paying for right now for my kids, and my wife just earned her master's. You know what? When I started working at home, people were like, do you have a hard time getting motivated? I'm like, I wake up in the morning, I look at my high maintenance kids and my absurd home, and I get my ass to the office, right? Yeah. And I work. A little bit of an overstatement, but there's just a lot of things I want to do. I still have gas in the tank, and I kind of always have. And I didn't want to be relegated to the things that I don't want to do just because I need to earn a living. Yeah. I do need to earn a living, but I want to do things that I'm good at. So I've kind of thought, what do I really want to do? Who else is doing it? Who can I learn from? And what maybe I might ask for that others might be reluctant to.
Yeah. David, in your public speaking, how do you give people the permission to do the things that they want to do? Because so many people, so I was reading an interesting book by Brad Lee. It's called The Hard Work. And he talks about, when I was a kid, they said you had to work hard, and the harder you worked, the more successful you'd be. So he got a job on a fire crew and realized that was the worst job ever. And then he went into sales, and he was like, wow, this is right up my lane. How do we give people the permission to pursue what they love and understand that they will succeed and make money at it?
Yeah, well, I think it comes with creating a path to get there. I think vision is part of it, right? You have to kind of know where you're going to create that path. But I think there's so much garbage out there about the name it and claim it, and some people are going to find this offensive, and I don't mean it that way, when they say everything you want in life is on the other side of fear. I think it's on the other side of hard work.
Yeah.
I don't think people are afraid of success. I think they just don't want to do the things. And who does, right? Who does? So one of my best friends, and I could even say I mentored him early on when he was 19 years old. But Rory Vaden is very, very successful. He's helped build a number of companies, but he wrote a book called Take the Stairs. And his whole thing was about doing the hard work. And it's that old adage that says there is no elevator to success. You got to take the stairs. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at a generation who's being fed garbage, that the key to success is being a TikTok influencer or having an OnlyFans page and showing their body parts, or all of these shortcuts. And, you can look at 2 or 3 people that were successful at that. How many of these brilliantly talented, great potential inner city kids who think that they're going to make a living because they're going to play basketball or sports, and such a fraction of them do. And I think if we can infuse them with the self-confidence and the love and expose them to opportunities, everybody of every economic station. But it's not about the shortcut. I mean, it's so easy if you think I can just be glamorous and be a Kardashian. It's just garbage. We had my wife and I know a young couple, and I'll leave it that way. And she was in college and he wasn't, and he was trying to convince her to quit so they can go travel around. And his whole big thing about YOLO, right? You only live once, life's short. And we got him on the phone to kind of mentor them. And I said, dude, let me be clear. That's garbage. Life is long. It's really long. We hear so much of this, life's short, you only live one. It's not short, it's long. And the opportunities that we have down the road are dependent in large part to the decisions and connected to the decisions that we make today.
Yeah.
Right. And we know as parents, and I know you've got 2 daughters, and I have 2, and then I've got stepkids, and I've got a son as well. And part of my job, especially with my boys, is just to get them to 18 without killing themselves or somebody else, right? Because we do things, right? We shoot guns and we jump ramps and we build forts and things like that, right? But it's helping them to recognize that this is such a short period of their life, that first act or the second act or the third act, and the things that we get for the rest of our life are based on the decisions we make now and the things that we try out in high school, right? I told my kids, play an instrument, do a play, join the band, play sports. And they all did those things. And doesn't mean that they're going to be good at everything, but and we know as we get older, feed your brain, be healthy. And then life can be long. I lost my mom at 69. She was watching a ball game and threw a blood clot. And people were like, it's such a blessing that she went quickly. I said, I think it would have been a blessing if she went at 90 quickly, but I miss her. Right. And so anyway, I'm being a bit preachy, but I'm just a big believer in infusing our kids, especially with the confidence that they can do great things. But go after the things and don't wait for somebody else's permission, or don't wait for somebody to ask you to I saw a really great meme the other day. It says something like, if a rocket ship is taking off, don't ask where it's going, just get on.
Right.
There's some truth in that, but there's, like I said, you and I, we've taken calculated risks and we've gone after things that complement our skill sets and our strengths.
I love what you talked about, YOLO and life being long. I'm in my 50s. I feel like I'm just now hitting my full stride. Like I'm healthy, I'm wise, I got a pocket full of cash, and it's like, okay, what am I going to do next? Because I got a long life to live. And thank God that early on I placed my health as a priority. I've always been a healthy individual. So here I am in my 50s, 0 ailments, right? I hope I didn't just jinx myself. But it goes to say, like for this couple you mentioned, get your college degree or finish that part of your life. And there's plenty of time to do the things, especially if you map out, like you said, go after the things that you think you want. They can be there for you at any time, but
I think one of the biggest impediments is, and I'm not the first to say this, of course, is what these young people see on social media, and this unrealistic, and it's not just body image. We all saw that growing up, but I think they think everybody's successful. I have a 22-year-old daughter. She's almost 23. And everybody does that comparative, I should be doing this by now. I'm like, you're 22 years old. She has a friend who is a teacher, and she's asked if she wanted to go with her for a month in Europe this summer. My daughter's between jobs, and she looked at me and I said, oh my God, go. And she goes, really, Dad? I said, when are you going to have this opportunity again? The obligations will increase, right? And the pressures. Do this stuff now. When I was in my 20s, I really loved to sing. And so I started an a cappella group, and we were pretty darn good. I mean, we opened for Ray Charles. We had CDs out, and people said, I said, I put an ad in the paper. if you remember the old movie, the Commitments, right? I just held auditions. I said, "Wow, how'd you?" Well, I said, "Because I wanted to sing."
Yeah.
So I had to find other people to sing with. So we did, old doo-wop-y kind of stuff. We did it for 10 years, and we did some big national championship. Well, I did it because I wanted to,
Yeah.
right? And because I knew in my 20s, I have that kind of opportunity and freedom. And it's the same thing about writing a book. We know there's millions of people say, "Oh, I'd love to write a book." Well, you know how to write a book? You write a book. You're right. There's a great thing that says the number one rule in writing is to write. So
That's right.
but I learned from others, right? Treat yourself like a client, map it out on the calendar. There's a lot of things we want to do. I just don't want to be that guy with regrets,
Yeah.
right? It's that famous adage that on the gravestone, right? The most important etching on the gravestone isn't your name or the epitaph or the day you were born or the day that you died. It's the dash, right? That dash between those dates represents the entirety of your life, everything you did and won and lost and learned and earned. And like you said, in your 50s, and I'll be 59 this year, people used to retire and they were dead in 5 or 6 years. Now we live 10, 20, 30 years. And so my whole mindset now is around legacy and impact and having a platform to stay relevant. I'm still working, loving what I do, but I'm much more conscious that I have more past than I have future. Right.
Yeah.
And I want to make good use of that time. So I'm still saying yes. And then sometimes I'm not asking permission and I just say yes. And I just say yes to myself.
You mentioned something that I think is worth going down that road a little bit. And that was this comparison thing. We compare ourselves to what we see on TikTok or Instagram. I don't look at those things that much, but I have a client and I'm coaching him on a new business and he is absolutely crushing it. And it's a business that I know well. And I said, look, I did not expect you to be this successful this fast. But he was complaining or feeling bad for himself that he has a friend the same age that's, multimillionaire flying around in private jets. I said, yeah, but what are your values? I said, I know for a fact you have a beautiful, wonderful wife and family and a successful kid playing soccer, and you're comparing yourself to somebody else, which you don't know what his values are. And he looks at me and goes, you know what, Jim, you're right. I said, and by the way, you're killing it in this new company you started. Think about your values first. And I just wish people would think about their own values and what's important to them instead of looking at that pretty picture on Instagram and thinking they need to be that or have that amount of money or that car or that house or whatever it is really figure out who you are and what makes you happy, right?
Right. And what's important. And of course, those of us who are very fortunate to have spouses and partners who are aligned with what it is we're looking for in life. But yeah, very much so. There's that famous parable of the successful business person, and he's down on a tropical island on vacation, and he talks to the guy next to him who runs a little rum shack, and he's just hanging out. And the whole gist of the story is he's like, well, what are you doing? He says, well, here's what I spend this time so I can make the money, so I can do this, so I can have time, so I can make more money, and then I can have a vacation and come down here. And the guy's just there, and he's happy. He doesn't have to have all the pressure to do it, right? Yeah. I don't know if that all came across, but when we look at external forces to sort of dictate what success looks like, and there's a certain amount that's accurate, just because we've got bills to pay, and it's a tough economy, and it's about to get worse. I think the pandemic gave a lot of people the opportunity, forced some to look inward and be a little more introspective. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that with people who saying, I don't want to work in the office anymore. There's a lot of economic questions around that, but I've got a couple I had breakfast with the other day who teaches a course at one of the big universities on retirement. And they used to run this big executive MBA program. And they said when they first started doing this 20 years ago, 90% of the people that went through the executive MBA program were funded by their company, right? Companies who said, we'll do tuition reimbursement and all that. And they said it's completely flipped. And now about 70% pay it for themselves because they're thinking, I don't think I want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't think I want to do this job anymore. And they're looking to upskill to do something else. And so, you know what, I think maybe if there's a positive that's come out of the comparative is people realizing that maybe they don't have to be stuck in doing what they're doing, and there's something other things to aspire to. But of course, the danger is when you look at what is unrealistic, right? Every guy doesn't have abs, every woman doesn't have a perfect size 2 body. But if that's enough to inspire people to get in shape or to work towards that, there's positives on both sides.
Sure. I appreciate, there's a book in front of me. It says Hard Times Create Strong Men. And,
Yeah.
when I look at COVID and this potential recession as a result of this inflation that we're experiencing, I think hard times create strong families.
Yeah.
And I think what a to look at the positive side of what's happened in the last few years is, I think families have come together, and I think that we can continue to do that and be stronger families, work together to find a way to meet our needs. Like you said, we're going to have to make money. We're going to have to overcome the high cost of living here pretty soon. How do we work together as families? And I would love to encourage, families in the future to work together and bring that unit back. The one that we've missed so much. We talked a little bit about the importance of being dads and how much we love it. And I just love to see a lot more of that. But as it relates to that and what you do, David, when you look at the future, how are you consulting or coaching or speaking to people as it relates to what's to come and where things are going?
Sure. I think where the real opportunities, and this is sort of the business hat of mine, I did marketing. I taught marketing and branding. I wrote books for almost 20 years, and I saw a real sea change happening in the world, which was what we say about ourselves becoming less meaningful and impactful, and what other people say about us becoming more so. And that was my big, profound shift from marketing to customer experience as a more meaningful differentiator. And to answer your question, I think where things are going is, I think companies are becoming much more aware and sensitive and cognizant as to what's changing in the world and the lives and the priorities of their customers or clients or patients or constituents, whatever they call their audience. For most of history, we have been what we call product centric, which we're very good at what we do. I know you understand this. We're very good at this. We know everything about it. We sell it to as many people as we can, and that creates market share. Nothing wrong with that. But we're in a time right now, because of social proof and Yelp and TripAdvisor and Rotten Tomatoes and Glassdoor, that everybody's good. I mean, if you weren't good, you'd be outed, or at least good enough, right? And sometimes good enough at a better price point is a better choice. So it's pushing really smart companies to become more customer centric, which doesn't mean customer focused. We're all customer focused, but we assume that we're good at what we do. We don't take our eye off the ball, but we work really hard to understand our customers better, not just what they're likely to buy, but what happened to them in the last day or week or month. What are their changing priorities? Who do they have to answer to? What are their pressures? So that we can align our products and our services and our delivery and our conversation to better understand real people. I mean, people are more than just their demographics and their psychographics and what they're likely to buy. We have, I tell a story on stage about recently when I dropped my youngest off in Florida. It was just a really emotional time for me. And, and I told him the night before I dropped him off and left him there. And I said, his name is Spencer. I said, Spencer, when you were the day you were born, we brought you home, and I just marveled, and I slept with you all night, and I kissed you, and I smelled your hair, and I chewed on your toes, and you were the most squishy, special, wonderful, amazing little boy. And I said, now 18 years later, on the last night, I'm going to do it again. And he goes, Dad, that's gross. And I said, dude, I'm not asking. And he said, all right, but we'll put a pillow between us. And of course, halfway through the night, his leg is over mine. And I mean, he's 6'3", 220, but he's still that same squishy, great boy. And I was like, just a mess on the way home. And I left him a note, and I was just in tears. I mean, just a mess. And I'm thinking, I know he's going to be okay. I'm just going to miss him. Right. And it's just this really emotional thing. And I talk about it, and I said, everybody, and I'll tell it for your audience as well, every person listening has 100 stories like that, right? What I say is, see that person, serve that person, love that person, sell to that person, right? The real people who have frustrations and aspirations and digestive issues and cheer on our kids and get heartbroken when our kids have their hearts broken, right? So to answer your question, I think here's where business is going. I think smart companies are taking extra time to really understand the people behind the purchases. Oh my God, that's really good. I got to write that down. That's a book title right there.
I just recorded it for you.
Okay, good. I was going to say that's, I'm like looking for a pen. That's good stuff. But I think that's where, and I think it's a wonderful thing. I think the companies that, whether it's through data collection and big data and everything else, I said, the more we can understand the humanity of the people who we want to work with or work for or partner with or buy from, I think we're going to have a distinct competitive advantage. And the ones who say no, right, to get back to your theme, the ones who hold fast and clutch to their traditional business model, which has always worked, right, are going to become the Toys R Us, are going to become the Kodaks and the Blockbusters, who in every case, none of them did anything wrong other than not recognize what had changed, right? Yeah. And I think we have so many wonderful tools now to really see the person beyond the transaction.
And I think we're going to have so many more opportunities to see the person. You know, it just as a random example, right? I filled up with gas yesterday to get to the campsite. $175, half a tank of gas in my pickup truck, right? But let's just say that I'd been saving for months to go on this camp trip, and I knew I needed to put $180 of gas in. And it's like, well, you know what? I'm going to put $175. I'm going to take $5 and go inside and buy a hamburger, right? My last $5 that I'm sacrificing the gas that I need that I've been saving to go on a trip to buy a hamburger. And if that person treats me shitty when I'm going to buy that hamburger with that last $5, like, wow, thanks a lot. You know, like I'm sacrificing to have an experience here, you know, with my last $5, and you've made it worse, right? And I think that, as you mentioned, we neglect to see the human or the person or the emotion behind the customer often, and I see it more now than ever.
But I think also, I think you'll agree that I think we're more conscious of the responsibility that we have to train those people, to expose a new generation who never had good service growing up, right? Yeah. And to be clear, I don't talk about customer service, but I talk about customer experience. And how we experience doing business is different, right? Because now we have apps and facial recognition and you know, these do-it-yourself options and others as well. It gives me plenty of fodder to talk about. But I'm also a big believer, and I'm kind of that sappy dad, that I think the humanity is important. I love that line that says, for those of us who have enjoyed a measure of success, it's important that we send the elevator back down, right? Help others. Who are we mentoring? Who are we helping who wouldn't be able to afford us otherwise? I was listening to a song the other day, and it's not a new song, but I listened to it probably 5 times in a row in my car and sent it to my kids because I'm that kind of a sappy dad. And it was that song by Tim McGraw called Humble and Kind. And listen to it again and listen to the words. And I love it at the end when you've had that measure of success, don't forget to turn back around and help the next one in line.
Yeah.
Right. And those things that, you know, as we get older and we get melancholy, and this is like when it's hot in the summer, you know, root beer popsicle, you know, there's so many things that bring great joy to life that don't have to connect with the Kardashians.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? Yeah. David, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot with a much larger question here. I know you have an answer for it, but you know, what is it that you, as an overview of humanity and people and encouragement, what is your message to people right now? What are you saying to give them? I don't want to say hope, because I think there's hope out there, but you know, how do you get them to that next level? What is it that you're saying up on stage?
I think it's not necessarily what I say on stage. When I say on stage, I've got a specific role, and it's to educate and to entertain the audiences. And I talked about how the world is changing, and they've got to recognize it. You can call it the new normal, the new next, the touchless tomorrow. And that broad message is just understand that the way things used to be isn't the way they are now, and it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
We have this one, my God, I get my groceries delivered. It's freaking awesome, right? We have this wonderful new amount of amenities. But as you alluded to in my funny introduction with the Cholula bottle, but it's not an excuse to do less for people. It's not an excuse. At some point, we've got to be able to move past COVID as an excuse, though legitimate at the time. We've moved past it. It's time. A lot of people were hurt, right? Physically, business-wise, and otherwise. So I'm very bullish on the future. I'm very optimistic. I freaking love a lot of the great changes. But I'm frustrated by those who cling to the old way or use it as an excuse, or who use these wonderful technologies to hurt people. It's something I don't talk about very much, but there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fake profiles on social media and dating sites around the world with my pictures and my kids. And I hear from a half a dozen people a week whose lives have been devastated because somebody scammed them with pictures of my kids or that stuff just breaks my heart, right? The division in our country right now breaks my heart. I love my country. And there was a time when Tip O'Neill and Newt Gingrich would go into a back room and they'd work out a compromise and they'd stand side by side and they'd announce it and we'd get things done for our country.
Yeah.
Do I talk about that on stage? Not really, because I'm just going to be clear. I have political beliefs, I have religious beliefs, and I discuss those with my family and friends, and I can't afford to piss off half of my prospective customers because I got a mortgage to pay in 3 colleges. Did I mention that? But my overall one, as I said, I think I'm a big-hearted guy, and I have something written on my wall, and I was part of a workshop years ago about creating our life mission statement. And I'll be honest, I kind of roll my eyes at stuff and I'm like, a little too touchy feely or whatever, but it was amazing. It was an amazing exercise. And my life's mission statement of where I am at this point in my life, it says very simply, I want to spend my life doing things that matter with people who care. Here's my North Star. I want to spend my life doing things that matter with people who care. And if it doesn't matter, it's going to get less of my attention. And if people don't care, then they're not aligned with me. And that's okay. Not everybody has to be. And what I used to have on my wall that I've been sharing with my kids a lot lately is the line that says, the measure of a person's character is what they would do if they knew they would never be found out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We do the right thing because it's the right thing. Doesn't mean that there's a million things. I talked to my 18-year-old. I said, there's a million things you can get away with. Trust me, I was there. But it doesn't mean it's the right thing. I'm going to leave you with one thing. And I wrote this in a book. When I was 18 years old, getting ready to go off to college, I had a big fight with my dad. We weren't getting along. I went to college paying for it myself. And I went to one of the local department stores and I had a friend who worked there and I stole probably $100 worth of underwear and socks. I mean, literally stuff to go away to college. And I left and I thought I was being followed, and I drove through neighborhoods and my heart was pounding and I never got caught. And it's no big deal. It's underwear and socks and whatever else. And then my first child was born. And I don't know why it came back to me. And then when my second child was born, I wrote a letter one day and I wrote a check to the chain. And I told about that I wrote a book called The Gift in Every Day, Little Lessons on Living a Big Life. And I wrote this story and I said, when I was 18 years old, I stole from your company. And I doubt that anybody works there who was there at the time. And I don't know if you even have a line to apply this to, but I would like to write this check and make a donation because I'm a father now and I want to set the right example. And I said, I don't want credit and I don't want thanks. And the check was cashed and I wrote for, I don't know, $250 or something like that. But it was important that I needed to do that and nobody would have known. But I did. Yeah. Did it change the world? No, but it made me more in alignment with the person I wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah. To make lighthearted of that story. I have a gross example of what you're saying, and I just love it because it's gross. Andy Frisell, another big podcaster, one of these speaking gurus, he says, I can tell everything about a person that leaves pee on the seat. Right? He's like,
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
they don't care about the next person, and they don't care enough about themselves to clean up after themselves. He says, I make it a point, no matter if I did it or not, to clean the pee off the seat. And if you really think about that,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's a lot
Well,
of truth to
here
that.
I heard another example that was really good in the last week. And someone says, I can tell you everything you need to know about their character by whether they return the shopping
Oh,
cart to the corral. I don't know who said that or some version of that. And
well,
I thought,
if you listen to my podcast, that I've talked about that all the time, because
do you?
it's a lesson I taught my daughter. She asked
Agreed.
me, she was 6, I think, and she says, Daddy, why is there shopping carts all over the parking lot? We're at Target. And I said, well, because people are too lazy to put them back. They go over there, and then somebody's got to come out and wrangle them all up. And she's like, oh, well, like a month later. And you're take the stairs, right?
Right.
I always park at the end of the parking lot, furthest, right? So we can walk all the way to the store. So this was one of those days I was in a rush. We parked in the end, and I put the shopping cart, you put it in the planter, and I get
Yeah.
in the car. My daughter puts on her, her car seat and everything. She says, Daddy, why are you being lazy today? I'm like, what? And she goes, you put the shopping cart in the planter. You're being lazy. Darn it. I had to get out of the car, go put the shopping cart where it belonged, and
You
it was
bet.
one of those funny reminders. Our kids are paying attention to us, but you're
They
right.
are paying attention. I heard a great line that said, as parents, we aren't raising children, we're raising adults. And our job is to prepare them for the world.
Yeah.
Right. And they are watching, right? Everything we say is being recorded, right? Especially to our daughters. And I'm not being sexist in any way, but this is as a girl dad myself. Um, my son would get yelled at by his coach and everything else. And my wife was really upset about it. And I said, Spencer, when your coach yells at you, how does it make you feel? He says, well, it makes me feel like I want to work harder. And I looked at her and said, boys are just a little bit different, right? My girls were hard. They get in the car, he hates me, whatever, right? We're different, right? And we have to love everybody hard for all of that. But everything we say is being recorded. Our kids are watching everything. I love the line that says, my father didn't tell me how to live. He just lived and let me watch him do it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a little more intentional than my father was, but yeah, there are so many, I just really want to live my life and being really intentional that way and setting that example for them.
Yeah. David, 2 more things before I let you go.
Yes, sir.
As an overview of our conversation, just thinking back, especially your last point there, we've talked more about the emotional side of business and how we approach things. Of course, our daughter's in the back of our minds, right? What would be your advice to people listening as it relates to their own emotional side of business? I mean, to me, I think it's perfectly acceptable. And I've noticed in the last 10 years, I've been a lot more emotional about my business decisions, my
Sure.
approach, how I handle my colleagues, how I handle my clients, etc. Because I'm on the other side of fatherhood, right? I'm on it now. And what would be your advice to maybe a younger generation as it relates to emotions in business?
Um, I I think it might be different than what you expect. My advice, because I've got 5 between 18 and 28, I talk a lot about the honor in work.
Mm,
There is honor in work. There is no jobs that we look down on. And what you're doing now doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I showed my daughter the other day because we recently moved, and I cleaned out and I had this old plastic business card holder that had the front and the back filled with different business cards I've had over my career, right?
yeah.
And so they have this thing in my mind. I don't want to do this forever. You don't have to, and everything leads to something else. Well, I'm not good, Dad. I'm not going to drive Uber. I'm like, those people work their butts off, right? People who there is honor in work and doing a good job. And to that end, and this isn't necessarily directed towards your thing, I've worked really hard with my kids to honor people who serve us. And have demonstrated this. And my daughter, my 22-year-old, showed me the other day, when we walk through the hallways of a hotel, we always say hi to the housekeepers. We always have a conversation with the taxi or the Uber driver, or we ask somebody at the front desk how their day is going, because so many people don't.
Yeah.
Right. People walk by, and when you walk by, maybe somebody who's Spanish speaking or something, who's cleaning the hotel rooms, and walk by and say, good morning. And they look up and they have this bright look. Well, good morning, sir. Right.
Yeah.
Because people don't.
Yeah.
And I think we honor everyone. I think back to your question, there's honor in work. And what you're doing now is say, it may not be Mr. Right, but it's Mr. Right now. If you're supporting your family, if you're supporting yourself, if you're putting yourself into your job and helping, we've seen people in what we might consider menial jobs, loving what they do, right? It's all about an attitude, but everything can lead to something else. And we're not going to start off, every 18-year-old wants to be a multimillionaire influencer. You know what? I saw a funny meme, and you might have seen it as well. It showed some kid pushing a lawnmower, and it says, "Go fund me circa 1974." Right? We get money not because we ask people on GoFundMe. We get money because we work for it.
Yeah.
And you feel good when you did it. And if you come home and you're exhausted at the end of the day, it means you worked hard.
Yeah.
And I think there's honor in that.
I love that position. I said, I asked somebody at Walmart, this is probably a year ago. It was, during kind of tough times. She was just working an aisle. She didn't look like she was happy. I said, "Hey, how's it going today?" And she looks at me and she smiles. She goes, "I'm so glad you asked. It's been a tough day. Nobody said anything to me all day until you said something." And, we don't have to do that. We can walk right by that person. And we're so aligned. I do exactly what you do in the hallways of the hotels. I say hi to every single person.
Every person.
The person checking me in, the gas station attendant, because you're right. There's honor in and we don't know their stories. We don't know their stories.
Right. And what comes back, right, is always appreciation. Mm-hmm. And we learn that it works because we get such great positive feedback, but it's so easy to walk past those who are invisible. Every one of us was that person, right? I speak for a living, and I'm about to go to my big convention for the National Speakers Association, and somebody was talking about the wannabes that are there. I'm like, I used to be a wannabe. Every person was.
Yeah.
Every person alive was a baby once, was in third grade, got caught picking their nose. I mean, we're all human. But sort of getting back to the theme of the show, but there's nothing wrong with aspiring to more.
Yeah.
Just don't hope for it.
Yeah.
And pray for it and look for the shortcuts. There'll be a few people that get it. And if you do, you know what? Bless your heart. But the only true, my buddy Rory Vaden, I'll leave you with this. He says, the only sure path to success is to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. Yeah. Right? That's the whole take the stairs thing as well.
Sure.
And if you go after things that you really enjoy and have fun doing it and serve somebody else, then you might even get paid for it.
Yeah, if you might even, yes. Put a little bow on that as we go into tougher recession times and inflation. Yeah. A lot of people are going to be taking jobs that they might not normally have taken out of necessity. So let's give them honor in these coming months as we see gas prices rise and groceries bills getting higher. So let's pay honor to those people serving us. David,
absolutely show grace to the people who are serving you.
Yeah.
And especially those who were overworked at restaurants. That's because somebody else didn't show up.
That's right. Absolutely.
20% tip. That's the minimum.
Yeah, for sure.
Jack it up. Make their day.
David, just in closing, you've got your book behind you there on the screen that I can see. You've got a beautiful website with a lot of things that you do. Could you give us just an overview of how people can get a hold of you and
Sure.
your book and what to expect if they reach out and go on your website or buy your book?
Yeah, thank you for that. You can just look me up at davidavrin.com. It's Avrin. I'm on all the social media everywhere. Of course, just look up David Avrin on Instagram. It's the real David Avrin. That's a whole other catfish for another day. But I work with organizations to help them win the customers by becoming ridiculously easy to do business with, to eliminate points of friction. I have a number of books. Why Customers Leave, and my new book is called The Morning Huddle: Powerful Customer Experience Conversations to Wake You Up and Shake You Up and Win More Business. audible books and all those things, well, just look me up on Amazon. But I respond to everything personally. I have a full staff, but if you have a question for me, happy to talk to you.
Love it. I'll put your information in the show notes so we can get that out there.
Cool.
David,
hey, thanks for having me on. What a great conversation. I so many of these where I'm talking business and business and business, and of course my heart is in service and humor and family, and I appreciate that you and I are brothers from another mother.
Yeah, and I feel that 100%. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to the show. More great guests coming up soon.